Praise the Lord. I welcome you to this Bible analysis class. As you know, we are traveling through the book of Numbers now. In the two previous classes, we have learned several spiritual lessons from the book of Numbers. And after splitting or dividing the book into three, we were traveling through the first two parts, chapter 1 to 14, forming the first part, and then 15 to 20, forming the second part. Now, these two parts were covered. I hope you remember the topics that we have covered there. 1 to 14 speaks about the old generation traveling from Sinai to Kadesh, and that was split into numbering, instructions, and journeying. Then the second part, 15 to 20, speaks about wandering and transition. The old generation dying off and the new generation coming up. There, God's provision, attack on Aaronic priesthood, and the death of the old generation were all examined. Now, this class, we come to the last part of the division, that is chapter 21 to 36, where we see the new generation traveling from Kadesh to Moab. Now, that can also be split into three parts. The first is chapter 21 to 25, where we see the journey continuing. So, that is journey. Then 26 and 27, numbering. 28 to 36, instructions. So, journey, numbering, and instructions. This is the way this part can be split. So, think about the journey. They were continuing the journey, and because the way was very long, last class I told you that they were journeying, and they were not reaching anywhere. Because they were continuing the journey and not reaching anywhere, their mind and their heart weakened in themselves. Or the people grew impatient, and the soul of the people was much discouraged. They were not encouraged, but they were discouraged. And they spoke against God, and they spoke against Moses. And out of despair, they murmured and complained. Hope you remember the 7 murmurings that we have studied in the last class. And they murmured about almost everything, about the food, about giants, about the way, about leaders, about God's intervention, about the desert, and again about their food. Continuous complaining and murmuring. Now, because of this, God punished them. And one of the ways in which God punished them that we have noted is wandering in the wilderness. And apart from wandering, at this particular point of time, God sent fiery serpents among the people. And these serpents bit the people. And much of the people of Israel died out. 21 and 7 says, Moses prayed about this to God. Fiery serpents among the people, and serpents beating the people, and a lot of people getting dead. And there was panic in the camp. So Moses went to God and prayed about it, and God gave a solution. God's solution is recorded in chapter 21, verses 8 and 9. 21st chapter, 8 and 9. The Lord said to Moses, make a snake and put it upon a pole. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live. So Moses made a bronze snake and put it upon a pole. Then when anyone was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, that person lived. I hope you remember this incident recorded in the 21st chapter of Numbers. God's punishment came in the form of fiery serpents coming among the people and biting several people, and many of them getting dead. And when Moses prayed, God gave a solution. That solution was to make a bronze snake and put it upon a pole in the middle of the camp. And whenever somebody is bitten by the snake, and if they look at the lifted up model of the snake, they will live. Look and live. In short, we can say, look and live. There is no logic in it. There is no rationale in it. But they had to believe, and to look at the bronze snake, they had to have faith, Now, this is a very important incident, because I hope you remember, if you have gone through the New Testament and the teachings of Jesus Christ, Jesus referred to it. John's Gospel, chapter 3, 14 and 15. Jesus, while talking with Nicodemus, referred to this incident, and that reminded us that it was a type of the death of Jesus Christ on the cross. Let us read John's Gospel, chapter 3, 14 and 15, and also look into 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and 9. These verses will bring out the meaning of this symbolism. John 3, 14 and 15 says, "And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." So the Son of Man was lifted up like the bronze serpent in the wilderness camp, and anyone who is bitten by the snake is supposed to look and live. Now, what is the meaning? What is the spiritual meaning? How we will decode it? And the Bible reveals that the whole human family, or whole humanity, has felt the serpent's sting of sin. Everyone is beaten by Satan and sin, which means the wages of sin is death. Because the snake has bitten you, we are supposed to die. The only way man can live or get out of it is by looking to cross. And looking to cross means there you can see one who took upon himself the likeness of men and was lifted up on the cross. So the model of a bitten human being and redemption through substitutional death was exhibited by Son of Man being lifted up, lifted up on the cross to take the sting of death upon himself. Jesus took the snake's poison on himself and he was lifted up. If we look on Jesus, our Savior, and call upon his name, we shall live. Anyone who calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved, is what we read in the Bible. So this is a model, a symbolic incident pointing to the coming of Jesus Christ and dying in our place. So that's why Jesus referred to it. Now, if someone listening to me is going to die because sin poison has bitten you, then we have a way out. By looking to Jesus, we can live. And that's what Hebrews 12 and 2 tells us. Look unto Jesus, who is the author and the finisher of our faith. Look away to Jesus, who is the author and finisher of our faith. Now, this is one of the major incidents that we have to note from 21st chapter of Numbers. Now, as we move on, chapter 22 to 25 presents before us another major event that you are supposed to skip. Very important lesson we can learn from chapter 22 to 25. There we see the confrontation with Balaam. We see Balak and Balaam coming here, 22 to 25. Now, this is again quoted in the New Testament in three places that adds to the importance of it. 2 Peter chapter 2, 15, Jude chapter 1 and 11, and Revelation chapter 2 and 14. These are the three places where this incident is again quoted in the New Testament. I'll give you the references again. 2 Peter 2, 15, Jude chapter 1 and 11, Revelation chapter 2 and 14. Now, this is the incident. Balak, the king of Moab, as the people were traveling and coming into Moab, Balak, the king of Moab, was afraid and he engaged Balaam, the soothsayer, to curse the Israelites. Balaam and Balak. Balak was the king and Balaam was the soothsayer. Balak engaged Balaam, the soothsayer, to curse the Israelites. Now, when Balaam came to curse the Israelites, he was not able to do that because God told him that this is a blessed group of people and this group of people are called out by God, so you are not supposed to curse him. So Balaam knew that he could not curse Israelites. He tried to do that several times and he was not able to do so. But Balak compelled him to curse and offered money. And because of his love of money and his covetous mind, he tried to curse them and he met with a very disastrous end. His disastrous end is explained in chapter 31 and verse 8. Please go and read that and find out what happened to Balaam. Now I am not concerned about that, but I am concerned about the spiritual meaning which is explained in New Testament. Now, once you come to New Testament, I told you that there are 3 references to Balaam, and we are told by the authors of these epistles and Revelation to learn from the experience of Balaam. What are we supposed to learn? First of all, take 2 Peter 2 and 15. There, Peter tells us about the way of Balaam. Beware of the way of Balaam. Now, what was the way, problem with the way that was followed by Balaam? He has forsaken the right way, or he gone astray. He knew the right way, but he forsook it, and he turned away and took a wrong way. And he did this because he loved the wages of unrighteousness, the wages of wickedness, or love of money, which is the root of all evil. Now, Paul says when he is writing to 2 Timothy that love of money is the root of all evil. Now, Balaam loved money, and when Balak offered a lot of money, he turned away from the right path and he went into a wrong path. He went astray. He went away from God, and because of his love of money, he did a very wrong thing against the revealed will of God. God revealed that God has blessed these people and you cannot curse. But he tried to curse, and that is a wrong thing that we must never do, and we must learn from Balaam. This is called the way of Balaam by Peter. Now, Jude in chapter 1 and 11 says the error of Balaam, the mistake of Balaam. What was the mistake, the error of Balaam? Again, his greed for reward, expecting something. When we serve the Lord, when we minister, never expect any reward. You have received freely, give it freely. Never expect a reward, or never expect a wage for the service that you are doing. But here Balaam expected a reward, and the expecting reward was from his greed, So that is the error of Balaam. And when we come to Revelation chapter 2 and 14, there we read the teaching of Balaam, or the doctrine of Balaam. So Balaam was teaching a wrong doctrine, a wrong principle. Now we must be careful about that also. Now Revelations tell us about 3 mistakes or 3 wrong doctrines that Balaam spread. Number 1, he encouraged people to eat things sacrificed unto idols. That means you need no separation. You can get unequally yoked with unbelievers. No, you are not supposed to do that. You are supposed to be a separate group of people, called out people of God, and to be a holy generation. Now, we studied this in Leviticus. In Leviticus, God repeatedly told them that you must be holy as I am holy. You are called out. You must be separate. You should not follow the practices that the Gentiles are doing, and you must obey the statutes and commandments that I have given you. So instead of following that strictly, Balaam encouraged these people to mix up with Gentiles and go for their sacrifices and eating sacrifices given to idols, etc. That was one of the mistakes. The second mistake was committing fornication or sexual immorality. Sexual immorality, mixing with them and intermarrying with them, unequally yoking with unbelievers or Gentiles. And the third mistake, putting stumbling blocks before the children of Israelites. Jesus has clearly taught that you should not put stumbling block. You must be a stepping stone and not a stumbling block. So 3 mistakes done by Balaam, and his wrong teaching, false teaching, is brought out by John in the book of Revelation. That is not keeping separation, then practicing immorality, and placing stumbling blocks before the children of God. These are all things hated by God, and because he did all these things, he had a disastrous end. So learn from the New Testament books the mistake that was committed by Balaam. So these 2 incidents in the last part of the book of Numbers are very crucial. The one that we have seen in chapter 21, snakes biting people, and the solution given by God to Moses. And the second instance, chapter 22 to 25, where we see the king Balak and the soothsayer Balaam. So learn from these incidents. Now, as we travel forward, when we come to chapter 26 and 27, we see the second numbering taking place. I told you that 2 times they were numbered. First time we see in chapter 2, 1 and 2, where the old generation was numbered. Now, as we travel to the last part of the book, when we arrive at 26 and 27, we see the second numbering. The new generation at the end of the 40 years wandering was numbered according to the instruction given by God. Now, the total number that they got after the census or after counting all the people is recorded in 26 and 51. Chapter 26 and 51 says that a total of 600,000, 1,730. 601730. 600,000, 1,730. I hope you remember the first total number that we have seen in chapter 2 and 32, 3,550. Now compare these two. We can see that 600,000 men were there, plus women and children. So a large crowd, a large number of people were traveling, and we see the death of the old generation and the coming up of the new generation. Chapter 27, 12 to 14. If you read chapter 27, 12, 13 and 14, there Moses was told about his death. Moses was foretold by God about his death, and he was given permission to climb up the mountain and take a look at the promised land, but he was not permitted to enter the promised land because Moses represents law, and law is not supposed to enter the promised land. Only grace can take you, grace and faith only takes you into the promised land. Law can never get into the promised land, but grace and truth will take us into the promised land. So Moses was not permitted to go into the promised land, but he was given a chance to take a look at the promised land. Now this is recorded in the 27th chapter, and God, who is the leader of the people, and God, who is a God of order and peace, commissioned another person to lead the congregation. Now 27:17 to 19 tells us that Joshua was commissioned or appointed in the place of Moses. In the place of Moses, another person was given the commission as the next leader of the Israelites. Now here again we have to note that the election comes from God, and not, the son or the daughter of Moses was elected, but the election was totally in the hands of God, and God revealed that in the place of Moses, Joshua should be the next person. And as we travel to the last part, the last chapters from 28 to 36 is instructions. I hope you remember the 3 parts. They were journeying, numbering was done, and the final part is instructions. Now, in the first 14 chapters also we have seen numbering, instructions and journeying. Here also we see the order is a little different, that's all. Now regarding the instructions, these instructions were about how to live and worship in the coming days in the promised land. Now in the first instance, instructions were about how to journey, but here instructions were how to live and worship God in the promised land. Now some of the important points that we have to note are the following. Chapter 28 and 29 talk about or teach about, instruct about offerings to be given to the Lord. As you worship God and as you live in the promised land, you are supposed to bring offerings to the to God, People were supposed to bring offerings to the Lord. Now, what were these offerings? Now, daily offerings were there. I'm not giving you all the details. You read these chapters and find out. Daily offerings, then Sabbath offerings were there, monthly offerings were there, Passover offering was there, then the Feast of the Weeks, that is Feast of Trumpet, Day of Atonement, and Feast of Tabernacle. So, on all these days, offerings were to be given to God. And that tells us believers that we are also supposed to bring offerings to God. Offerings. Now, details about offerings are given in 28 and 29. Now, chapter 30 is a chapter which gives about oath or vows of men and women. Especially that chapter is important for understanding women. Women are supposed to be under authority. Till marriage under father and after marriage under husband. Now, what is the logic behind it is explained in chapter 30. It's a small chapter. Please go through the chapter and get to know how to make oaths or vows before God and how to fulfill it. Now, chapter 31 deals with how to take vengeance on Midianites, and after you take vengeance on Midianites, how to divide the spoils. The details about dividing the spoils are given in chapter 31. Now, 32 to 36 is another unit, chapter 32 to 36. There we read about the Transjordan tribes. That is a request placed by 2.5 tribes, the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. They presented a request before Moses that they must be permitted to settle on the eastern side of Jordan, and that was granted. Now, this decision was not according to the will of God. They did not follow God's instructions, but they decided to choose this area because they saw that it was a good area. Now, to understand that, you can read chapter 32, the first 2 verses. They decided according to the sight, not according to faith. Now, we have learned in the book of Numbers all through the journey, the problem was the temptation to live by sight rather than living by faith. And unfaithfulness was one of their major problems or major sins. So here also, these 2.5 tribes repeat the same mistake. Instead of following God's directions and living in faith, they decided to choose after what they saw by sight. And they had to pay the consequences for that. That you can read in the book of Chronicles. So anyway, their request to live in the Transjordan area is presented in the 32nd chapter. Now, as we come to 35 and 36, we see there God's instruction about making some towns for the Levites, and also instructions about cities of refuge. The Levites were not given any portion because they were called out people for serving the Lord. A provision was given by God whereby 42 cities were to be built and separated for sustaining the Levites. And 6 cities were to be developed as cities of refuge. Now, the number, the purpose, distribution, regulations are all given in these chapters. I will give the references. You can personally go to the chapters and these verses and learn about it. Chapter 35, 6 to 8 talks about the number of cities. 6 cities of refuge and 42 towns for the Levites, putting together a total of 48. That is explained in 35, 6 to 8. Chapter 35, 9 to 12 speak about their purpose. Their purpose was for refuge and protection, for protection and for refuge. Now, 35, 13 and 14 speak about their distribution, the distribution of the cities. Then 35, 15 to 34 speaks about or teaches about their regulations. So, the number of cities, the purpose of the cities, the distribution of the cities, and regulations regarding the cities are all given in the 35th and 36th chapter of Numbers. And as we approach the last part, 35 and 34 is very, very important. Or the most important regulation given by God is seen in chapter 35, 34, which reads like this: Therefore, defile not the land which you shall inhabit. Defile not the land which you shall inhabit, where I dwell, for I the Lord dwell among the children of Israel. Very or most important verse from the book of Numbers. The most important instruction given by God is I dwell in the land which you inhabit. And because I dwell in the land which you inhabit, you are not supposed to defile the land. Do not defile the land that you are going to inherit. We will inherit a land, and it must be a holy land. It should not be defiled by sin of the people, unbelief of the people. Because God told them that I, the Lord, dwell among the children of Israel. Now think and meditate on what God said. The Lord told them that I dwell with you in the land which you inherit, which means I dwell among the children of Israel. Where was God dwelling? God was dwelling in the tabernacle, which was in the middle of their camp, you know. So, God's desire to dwell with the people. If God has to decide with us, then God is a holy God, so we must also maintain our holiness. Be sanctified group of people, separate group of people, and holy group of people. Because God constantly says, I am holy, you are supposed to be holy. So maintain the holiness of the country. The country means all the activities in the country. So Holy Land actually means a place where God lives. God is holy and we must also be holy. So this is the book of Numbers. And before we close the study on the book of Numbers, I would like to give you two symbols of Jesus Christ from Numbers. Now we have already mentioned that the brazen serpent, or the serpent that was raised in the middle of the camp for people to look and live, is a picture of Jesus Christ. Christ himself made it very clear in John 3 and 14. Look and live. So that is a picture of Jesus Christ in Numbers. Another picture of Jesus Christ is the city of refuge. Just now we have mentioned about 6 cities of refuge. People who have committed mistakes unknowingly were given protection, and they were given refuge in these cities. When we do sin and mistake, Jesus Christ is a city of refuge. His name is like a refuge. We can call upon him and we can run to him. He will protect us. He will save us. He is a friend of tax collectors and sinners. So he is a refuge. People who have no refuge nowhere can run into the city of refuge. It's another picture of Jesus Christ. Picture of Jesus Christ, two of them from the book of Numbers, the brazen serpent and cities of refuge. Now this is in brief the book of Numbers. I hope you have followed all the details and the spiritual meaning of the book of Numbers. And thank you for traveling with me through the book of Numbers. God willing, next class we will be traveling through the book of Deuteronomy. Till then, God bless you and keep you. Thank you for joining us. God bless you all.